In the remote village of Grenton, nights were feared more than famine. The peasants claimed that when the wind howled from the east, it carried the whispers of those who had vanished long ago. On a moonless night, young Ulrich stayed awake by the dying fire. Hearing faint voices outside his wooden hut, they called his name softly, almost lovingly. His mother had warned him never to answer the whispers, for they were the voices of the lost. But curiosity, stronger than caution, led him to open the door. The cold air rushed in, and beyond the flickering torchlight, he saw figures, thin, pale, and swaying. They beckoned him toward the forest's edge. By morning, Ulrich's hut was empty. Only his footprints led into the woods, and stopped abruptly near the old oak, known as the Devil's Gate. From that night onward, the whispers grew louder. One by one, villagers began disappearing. They say Grenton was swallowed by the night itself, a village erased by the same voices it tried to ignore. No traveler dares to speak its name aloud, for fear the wind may whisper back. Every winter, the peasants of Blackmere lit great fires around their fields. It wasn't for warmth. It was to keep it away. The beast that prowled beyond the frozen soil wasn't like other wolves. Its eyes burned red, and its shadow stretched longer than its body. When old Marta's sheep were torn apart, one frosty dawn, the men gathered with spears, following the trail of blood into the woods. But the tracks, they were wrong. Too large. Too human. At dusk, a storm rolled in. One by one, torches went out.
They heard a growl, deep, guttural, followed by screams that froze the air. By morning, the fields were still.
Only the fires remained, crackling over crimson snow.
Marta said the wolf was once a man, cursed for breaking a sacred vow to the forest spirits.
Each full moon, he roamed to feed on the living, forever hungry, forever alone. And so, every winter, the peasants kept their fires burning, praying that the beast stayed beyond the fields, and never remembered its way home. At the center of Millen village stood a wooden cross, said to protect the peasants from evil. But one winter, under the pale moonlight, the shadows began to move. Children claimed they saw figures kneeling beneath the cross, whispering in an unknown tongue. When Father Osric blessed the sight, his holy water turned to ice mitter. That night, his voice echoed through the streets, crying prayers that ended in silence. In the morning, the villagers found the cross splintered and blackened. Fear spread like wildfire. The peasants nailed charms to their doors, hung garlic and iron over windows. But it was no use. Each night, shadows gathered where the cross once stood, dark figures that grew taller with every moon. They say Millen was cursed because the land had once been a burial ground for forest spirits. The villagers had built their homes on stolen earth.
Now, the shadows claimed what was theirs.
The moon still rises over that field, and on clear nights, travelers swear they see the outlines of kneeling figures, praying beneath a cross that no longer stands. The forest of Tharnwood had always been forbidden after dusk. Trees grew twisted, their roots tangled like veins through the soil. But hunger made men foolish. 3 peasants entered one night, hunting for deer to feed their starving families. They never returned. Only one body was found torn open, eyes wide with terror, mouth filled with leaves. Elder Bryn claimed the forest had a spirit, the mother Root, who awakened when her children, the trees, were harmed. He warned that blood spilled on her soil fed her rage. After that, strange things happened. Roots crept across the village paths. Doors creaked open without wind, and at night, whispers rustled through the leaves. Leave us.
When the villagers tried to burn Tharnwood, the fire turned back upon them, leaping from tree to thatch.
The forest devoured everything, leaving only ashes and silence.
Today, where Tharnwood once stood, no grass grows.
The earth itself refuses to forget. In the village of Dornful, it was said that no one should answer a knock after midnight. The elders spoke of a demon that mimicked lost loved ones, calling your name through the door.
One stormy night,
Young Ida heard her brother's voice outside.
He had died 2 winters before. Let me in, it whispered. It's cold. Her heart broke, and despite her trembling hands, she unlatched the door. A figure stood in the rain, familiar, yet wrong. Its eyes were hollow, its smile too wide. It stepped inside without sound. By dawn, Edda was gone. The villagers found claw marks on the walls and ashes where she had slept.
From then on, every door in Dornful was sealed with salt and iron.
But sometimes, when the wind blows hard enough, you can still hear gentle knocking, patient, polite, and waiting. The winter of 1321 was the coldest the peasants of Wormstead could remember. Livestock froze in their barns, and hunger gnawed at every belly. But worse than the hunger was the howl. Each night, just after midnight, it came from the northern hills, a sound so mournful it made the dogs whimper and the men clutch their crosses. Some said it was a wolf. Others swore it was the soul of a man who had betrayed the forest spirits, doomed to wander as a beast until forgiven. One desperate night, a hunter named Oswin went to end the terror. He followed the sound through the snow until he found a figure, half man, half creature, kneeling beside an ancient stone altar. Its eyes glowed like dying embers. The thing looked at him and whispered, "End me!" Oswin raised his spear.
But when dawn came, the villagers found only Oswin's tracks, and another voice joined the howl.
Even now, when the snow falls heavy, travelers hear two howls echoing together, one beastly, one human, mourning what they became. Every hut in the valley of Eldrit had a small pit of burning coals by the door. Travelers thought it strange, but the peasants knew better. It was the only thing that kept them away. Long ago, the valley was cursed by a wandering monk who claimed the villagers had refused him shelter. That night, he disappeared into the fog, and soon after, pale figures began appearing in the fields. They moved silently, their faces blank, their touch like frost. The old crone, Mother Hale, discovered that fire kept them back. They feared the warmth of the living, she said.
From then on, every door glowed with a flicker of flame.
One night, a young boy, tired of tending his family's coal pit, let the fire die. In the morning, the door stood open, and only ash remained inside.
Now, each evening before dusk, villagers whisper a prayer and light their coals anew, not for warmth, but for warning.
For in Eldrith, darkness always waits for one forgotten flame. In the shadow of Blackthorn Forest, villagers spoke of a spirit that thrived not on flesh, but on fear itself. It was unseen, formless, but always near. When the first child vanished, people blamed wolves. When the second disappeared without a sound, they knew it was something else.
Doors were barred, prayers whispered, yet the dread grew heavier each night. Then came the dreams.
Every villager dreamt of the same thing. Eyes watching through the cracks of their huts, cold breath at their necks. Those who woke up screaming were found lifeless by dawn.
The elder priest declared that the spirit could only be starved if no one feared it.
So one night, they gathered, holding hands, chanting prayers, refusing to tremble. But one man, a father, wept for his lost son. The spirit found him, and with it, the whole village fell silent. Now, Blackthorn lies abandoned. The trees whisper even in still air, as though fear itself never truly died. It merely found a home. Behind the crumbling chapel of St. Ivor lay a patch of woods fenced off with rusted chains. No one went near it, for the priest had warned. The ground remembers what we buried there centurious ago. Heretics were executed and buried without rites in that forest. When lightning struck the church spire one stormy night, the graves split open. The next morning, claw marks scarred the trees from within. A shepherd boy once dared to cross the fence for lost sheep. He returned pale, muttering about men with empty eyes and a woman whispering psalms backward. He died before sunrise, his tongue turned black. To this day, the villagers leave offerings by the fence, bread, wine, candles, to keep the restless dead from wandering. But sometimes, when the church bell rings without wind, the priest locks the doors and prays, because he knows the dead still rise for one night each year.
The night their graves, remember, the living?
The bell of the old monastery was only meant to toll for mass or death. But one fog-drenched night, it rang 3 times, though no monk had touched it. The villagers gathered, trembling. The abbot declared it a warning from God. Yet, when dawn came, half the monastery lay in ruin. Inside, the monks were found kneeling in prayer, faces frozen in terror.
One survivor claimed he saw a shadow descend from the bell tower, a figure made of smoke and eyes.
It whispered in a voice that shook the air, 3 rings for 3 souls. After that night, whenever the bell rang once, someone died before morning. When it rang twice, 2 vanished into the woods. And when, one winter eve, it rang 3 times again, the entire village fell silent forever.
Now, travelers who pass the ruins swear they still hear faint tolls in the mist. The nuns stay long enough to count.
In the hidden valley of Darnwick, the crops never failed, and the winters were mercifully short. Outsiders called it blessed, but the peasants knew the truth. Their peace came from a pact, signed in blood. Long ago, when famine struck, the elders of Darnwick climbed to the old standing stones and called upon something that lived beneath the earth. The spirit agreed to protect the village, but each decade, it would claim one soul. The first sacrifices were chosen in secret. The sick, the unwanted, the forgotten. But as the years passed, the spirit's hunger grew.
One autumn, when the earth trembled and the fields turned black, the elders realized the offering had been missed.
They drew lots, and fate chose Elder Brand's only daughter. Her screams echoed across the valley as they buried her alive beneath the stones. The next harvest was bountiful.
Centuries later, when travelers dig near
they find bones that shouldn't be there, and sometimes faint whispers underfoot. The pact, it seems, was never truly broken, only delayed. The people of Hymir believed wolves to be cursed messengers of the devil. But one winter, a creature came that defied all tailies, a wolf with eyes as black as pitch and fur that shimmered like smoke. It prowled the edges of the village each night, silent as breath. Livestock were found drained of blood, not torn, as if death itself had fed.
One evening, young Ivor shot an arrow into the beast's chest. It howled, retreating into the trees.
But at dawn, they found Ivor's father dead, his chest pierced by his son's very arrow. From that night onward, no one hunted again. The wolf continued to circle the village, leaving no tracks, no scent, only silence. The old priest said it was the spirit of vengeance, bound to the blood of those who dared harm the wild. And when the moon turns black behind clouds, villagers swear they see its eyes in the fields, watching, waiting for the next arrow to fly. The north wind carried more than snow. It carried voices. The peasants of Frostvale called it the Whisperer, a demon born from blasphemy and cold. When a noble built his manor upon sacred ground, the winds began to scream at night. Servants fled, claiming the air itself spoke in tongues. But the Lord stayed, mocking the old faith. Then one stormy eve, the wind stopped. The silence was unbearable. When the servants dared to look inside, the manor was frozen from within the Lord and his family encased in ice, faces twisted in agony. Each winter since the north wind returns, doors rattle, fires die, and the air grows heavy with whispers. Villagers say if you hear your name carried by the wind, never answer, for the Whisperer collects the voices of those who do, freezing them into eternal silence. Every home in the hamlet of Norla kept a single candle burning in the window each night. It wasn't for light, it was for warning. Long ago, the dead rose from their graves, not to harm, but to return home. They wandered the misty roads, searching for warmth. The candlelight told them, "You are remembered. Rest now."
1 year, a careless widow forgot to light hers.
That night, her husband, dead for 5 winters, came knocking. When she opened the door, he stood pale, eyes hollow, whispering, "Why did you forget me?" The next morning, her house was cold, and the candle was found melted to the floor, still burning. Now, no one dares let the flame go out, even when storms rage, even when the wind howls. Every window glows with flickering light, not for the living, but to keep the dead from coming home. Every harvest season, when the moon hung red over the wheat, the peasants of Hollowmere heard screams from the fields. Some said it was foxes, others said spirits of those buried beneath the soil. Years ago, a cruel baron had worked the villagers to death, burying their bodies in the fields to feed the earth. But the earth remembered. Each autumn, the fields swayed, though there was no wind. At night, shadows rose between the stalks, tall, human shapes with hollow eyes. They didn't attack, they only screamed, a cry that froze the blood and curdled the heart. The villagers built a stone wall around the cursed land and never tilled it again. Still, sometimes, travelers crossing Hollowmere at dusk claim to hear the fields cry out. They say the harvest there is bountiful, but only in the season of the dead. In the outskirts of Moorhaven lived a woman named Elswith, feared, whispered about, yet never seen in daylight. The peasants called her the Shadow Witch. They claimed she could speak to the darkness itself. One night, during a blood moon, villagers saw strange lights flickering from her cottage. Drawn by fear and curiosity, they crept closer. Through the window, they saw Elswith dancing, her movements elegant yet wrong, as if guided by unseen hands. Around her, shadows twisted and bowed, mimicking her every motion. When the men burst in, she was gone. Only her cloak remained, and dozens of black figures moving across the walls, dancing still. From that night onward, anyone who ventured near her abandoned home saw their own shadow move before they did, whispering, mocking, leading them astray. They burned the cottage to the ground, but even the ashes danced in the firelight. Now, the villagers say
The Witch of Moorhaven still dances when the moon turns red, and those who watch too long
become her shadow. Farmer Edric had always said his cattle feared something under the floorboards. Each night, they trembled, eyes fixed on the ground. He thought it was rats until the bleeding stopped. When he lifted the wooden planks, a foul smell rose from the earth. Beneath lay a dark tunnel, breathing. From its depths came a low growl, not animal, not human. He sealed the opening, but the next morning, the boards were cracked open from below. Footprints, wet, three-toed, and burning to the touch, led across the barn and vanished into the fields. That night, the creature returned. His wife sat first, tall as a man, skin like bark, eyes hollow as wells. It didn't kill. It only watched, head tilted, as if remembering something. By dawn, the barn was gone. Not burned, not broken, just gone. To this day, travelers find a perfect square of dead earth where it once stood. They say the creature still lives beneath, waiting for the next farmer to build above its grave. In the mountain village of Brantful, the full moon was feared, not worshipped. On those nights, the villagers sealed every window and covered their mirrors with cloth, for when the moonlight touched glass, they appeared. The first sighting came when a shepherd left his window uncovered. In the reflection, he saw a figure standing behind him, pale, grinning, featureless.
When he turned, the room was empty.
But in the mirror, they moved closer. By morning, the shepherd was gone. Only his mirror remained, cracked from within. Now, every full moon, strange footprints appear on rooftops, long, slender, clawed. And if anyone forgets to cover their mirrors, they vanish before sunrise. The villagers call them the unholy visitors. They are not ghosts. Not demons, but something older, drawn to their own reflections, using human eyes as their doorway. So on full moons, Brantful glows dark, every mirror hidden, every window sealed, waiting for dawn to save them from their own reflection. At the edge of Thistle Hollow stands a ruined chapel, its bell long fallen, its altar buried in dust. The villagers say it was once a holy place until the prayers turned black. When famine struck, the desperate priest prayed not to God, but to anything that would listen. Something did. The next morning, the fields bloomed again. But the priest's eyes were empty, and his voice was no longer his own. The villagers fled, leaving the chapel to rot. Yet at night, travelers passing nearby hear murmured prayers in a language unknown. Some say the voices beg for mercy, others that they invite you to join the congregation below. One hunter once sought shelter inside during a storm. He returned at dawn, pale and trembling, muttering, "They're still praying, but not to heaven." Now, no one steps near the chapel after dusk, for even the crows that land on its roof are found dead by morning, mouths open in silent prayer. In the heart of Old Fen stood an ancient stone well, said to grant wishes for a price. The peasants believed it was guarded by something unseen, something that demanded respect. Every decade, a traveler would vanish near the well. Their belongings were found scattered along the path. Shoes facing backward, coins melted to the ground. When a young woman named Lyra went to wish for her dying child's life, she dropped her silver ring into the water and heard it speak back. "A life for a life," it whispered. The next morning, her son was miraculously healed, but Lyra was found at the well's edge, her face pale as chalk, her reflection frozen in the water, smiling when she did not. Since then, no one drinks from the well. The path is overgrown, yet some nights, villagers see ripples shimmer in the distance, as if something beneath still waits for another wish to claim. The woods beyond Lornvale were said to breathe. Peasants swore they heard sighs among the trees at night, and sometimes
Saw eyes blinking in the darkness.
a hunter named Wulrich laughed at such tales. "Eyes are only foxes," he said, gripping his bow. But when his dog refused to enter the forest one night, the laughter faded. The silence was too thick, the air too still. As he walked deeper, dozens of glowing eyes appeared, green, red, yellow, surrounding him in perfect silence. He raised his torch, and the light trembled. The shapes didn't move. They only watched. Then, one by one, the eyes blinked out, except for one pair. Closer now, almost human. At dawn, his bow was found leaning against a tree. Wulrich was gone, but the villagers noticed something strange. That night, new eyes appeared in the forest, one more than before. They say the woods of Lornvale collect souls, and when you stare long enough into their shadows, the forest stares back. In the hamlet of Brindle, the children were told never to play outside after the church bell rang at dusk. "The dusk folk will take you," their parents warned. One evening, laughter echoed through the fields. 5 children chasing fireflies, forgetting the time. When the bell rang, the air grew heavy. A mist rolled in, carrying soft singing voices that sounded like their own mothers calling them home. Only one child returned, pale and trembling. She said, the others followed the voices into the fog, where tall figures with hollow faces waited, hands outstretched. "They said they wanted to play forever," she whispered. By morning, only their footprints remained, leading into the woods and stopping at the old stone circle. Every year since, on the same night, villagers hear faint laughter near the fields, children's voices calling each other through the mist. The bell still rings at dusk, and no child dares ignore it. When the moon turned red, the peasants of Hollow Hill locked themselves indoors. "It was the night the earth bled," they said. When the dead remembered the living, generations ago, a lord built his manor atop Hollow Hill, defying warnings that the mound was sacred ground. The night of the first blood moon, his servants vanished, and his livestock were found drained dry. The lord's body was never found, only his crown, buried halfway in the soil. Since then, every blood moon red mist rises from the hill. Anyone who ventures near hears whispers beneath their feet, voices begging for release. Some claim to see hands pressing through the ground, pale and trembling, trying to claw their way out. No one dares go close, for those who do are said to join the whispers, forever buried beneath the bleeding moon. The people of Fenridge built a fence of sharpened stakes around their village, not to keep things out, but to keep them in. Each morning, the villagers found strange footprints inside the fence. Long, slender, and too many to count. No one ever saw what made them, but every dawn, someone was missing. Then one night, a brave man named Torin stayed awake with his spear. As the moon rose, shadows gathered beyond the fence, tall, thin shapes that didn't move but watched, their heads tilted in unison whenever he blinked. When morning came, Torin was gone. Only his spear leaned against the fence, pointing inward. Now the villagers no longer look beyond the stakes. They mend them by day and pray by night, never asking what they re-keeping inside or what is still watching from the other side. At the crossroads between 4 villages stood a stake blackened with age. Travelers said it was cursed that long ago. A witch had been burned there, laughing as the flames consumed her. Before she died, she spat a final curse. Where fire met flesh, fire shall return. Now, each year, on the anniversary of her death, the crossroads burn anew, flames rising from the earth, without wood or spark. Those who dared to watch see faces in the fire, whispering secrets of those who wronged them. One greedy miller once tried to collect ashes from the flames, believing they'd bring him fortune.
By morning, his mill had burned to the ground, and only blackened footprints led from his door to the crossroads. The peasants avoid that path after dark.
For at midnight, the flames glow bright as stars, as if the witch still dances where her ashes fell, waiting for the next soul to pass through her fire. In the northern hamlet of Dregmore, a traveler arrived one snowbound evening. He was polite, soft-spoken, and carried no luggage but a long, heavy sack.
The peasants welcomed him until the dogs began to bark.
That night, the blacksmith's daughter saw the stranger standing in the moonlight behind the inn, peeling something from his arm. She watched in horror as he pulled off strips of flesh-like fabric, revealing fur and claws beneath. By dawn, half the village was gone. Only torn clothes and bloody footprints remained, leading into the woods where the traveler's sack lay open, filled with human skins. The next night, a familiar face returned, the blacksmith's wife, smiling, alive. But her eyes were wrong. From then on, Dregmore never trusted travelers again. Some say the beast still walks among them, wearing a new face each winter, waiting for the next village, foolish enough to open its doors. There came a night in
Greystone, when the sun never rose.
The villagers waited for dawn, but the sky remained black. The stars gone, the moon vanished, even the air heavy with silence. Crops withered, animals refused to move, and the church bell cracked in half. Then came the sound, faint at first, like footsteps above them, though there was no ceiling but the dark. One by one, torches went out, devoured by a lightless mist.
Those who wandered outside were swallowed whole, their screams echoing like whispers from beneath the ground.
After 3 days, the dawn finally came.
But the light revealed empty homes, doors open, tables set, and no villagers left to greet it. Now, when the sky clouds over Greystone, travelers hurry to leave before nightfall. They say the darkness there is an absence of light, but something alive that remembers hunger. Every hut in Hallowmere bore a wooden cross over its door. For generations it had kept evil away, until one winter when the crosses began to fall. No storm, no wind. They simply dropped to the ground, one by one. That night, villagers awoke to scratching at their walls, soft knocking on their windows. Prayers filled the air, but the air grew colder still. When dawn came, the priest found the crosses burned where they fell, and black handprints on every door. In the center of the village stood the chapel, its cross twisted, pointing downward. They rebuilt the symbols, reblessed the ground, but the protection never returned. It was as if faith itself had fled. To this day, travelers say Hallowmere is a place where no holy symbol works, where prayers turn to ash on the tongue, and something unseen waits patiently for silence to fall. Long ago, Black Hollow was a thriving village, until the day its well ran red. The elders called it a sign of the gods' anger, but the truth was far older. An ancient spirit had been buried beneath that well, chained by monks who feared its power. When the peasants dug too deep for water, they broke the chain. At first came whispers, then sickness. Children were born without eyes. Crops grew black and bled sap like wounds. Those who tried to flee never made it past the forest. The last survivor wrote a warning on the chapel wall before vanishing. Do not call its name.
Now,
The ruins of Black Hollow lies silent, the well still standing, sealed with iron and stone.
But if you listen at night, you can hear something moving below, whispering in a voice that sounds too much like your own, in a monastery deep within the mountains. The monks had one sacred rule. Every night, before the final bell, they must finish their prayers. For when midnight came, the walls listened. No one knew why until Brother Aman overslept. When the bell struck 12, he woke to silence. The air was thick, as if alive. Then he heard it chanting, but not human. The voices came from the stone itself, repeating his unfinished prayer backward. He fled to the chapel, but the altar had sunk into the floor, as if the earth itself had swallowed it. When the others found him at dawn, he was kneeling, eyes black, lips moving, in a whisper that wasn't his own. From that night on, the monks prayed faster, never daring to stop before midnight. And when the final bell rang, they bowed their heads, not in worship, but in fear. For they knew the walls were listening and waiting for one mistake.